he's responding a little bit to pressure already. And I think, his advisors are just desperately looking for a way to give him an exit ramp and save face in this instance.
Let's go back to what's happening in the States. Donald Trump has said the termination of the U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell can't come soon enough, raising fresh concerns about political influence on America's central bank. The comments are just the latest attack on Powell by the US president and have added to speculation that the White House is looking to remove him from his post before his term ends next year. Trump has said Powell hasn't done enough to strengthen the US economy as the effects of the tariffs kick in. But many are concerned about the impact of ousting the Fed chief. Let's speak to Douglas Holtz-Eakin, president of the American Action Forum and a former director of the U.S. Congressional Budget Office. So, Douglas, you're just the guy to talk to. Welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, first of all, in headline terms, what about this tussle between the chairman of the Fed and the president?
Well, the tussle is not new. President Trump appointed Jerome Powell chairman when he was first president back in 2018. Mr. Powell was criticized roundly by the president during his first term on multiple occasions, and that was when the specter of him first being fired was raised. Mr. Powell was reappointed by ex-President Biden for 4 more years of a term, and on the campaign trail, the president again criticized the chairman. This issue was raised. Would he fire the Fed chairman? And when asked about it, Chairman Powell said, "Can he fire you?" He said, "No." If he asked you to leave, would you? He said, "No." He said, "Would you care to elaborate?" And he said, "No." And that's the last statement Mr. Powell's made on this topic. And the president has continued to talk, as you've heard so much about.
Certainly. And it seems that the president was particularly irked by Mr. Powell's comments yesterday evening at an event in Chicago. And he said the Trump administration, has brought in some, quotes, very fundamental policy changes, including the tariffs, which are, quotes, significantly larger than anticipated. It's a statement of fact. Why is the president so angry?
The statement of fact contradicts what the president says, and that makes him angry. Mr. Powell went on to elaborate that those tariffs would cause inflation to be higher, somewhat higher, and the economic growth to be somewhat slower. And so that's also a statement of fact. I don't know any economist who disagrees with that assessment. The question is the magnitudes. And when asked about the magnitudes, he said, well, we really have no idea. This is much bigger than the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, and that was 95 years ago. We're in uncharted territory. So I think that's a fair assessment of the situation, but the president's displeased that someone would suggest these tariffs were somehow negative in any way.
Right. And Douglas, you're the president of the American Action Forum and a former director of the U.S. Congressional Budget Office. I'm going to guess that you are a traditional fiscal conservative.
I am.
Right, okay. So how do you respond to what appears to be chaos unleashed both on the U.S. domestic economy and, if you look at what the leader of the IMF has said today, the world economy?
I'm dismayed. I mean, this is an own goal. This is just a terrible policy error that's been made by the Trump administration. It serves no one's interest. And that is the most baffling part of this entire tale. If you think about it, were he to remove, in an unprecedented fashion, Jerome Powell as chair of the Fed, I would be worried about the world capital markets and market stability, and worried about the dollar, and having something that makes the so-called Liberation Day look like child's play is not in the president's interest. He doesn't need that kind of turmoil, yet he's persisting in this line of inquiry. So, today we learned one additional fact your listeners might want to know about. The president has met on a number of occasions with a gentleman named Kevin Warsh, whom most view as the likely successor. And he has asked Kevin Warsh about replacing Donald Trump. So this isn't a hypothetical. He's actually spoken to someone about taking the job. That's quite damaging and makes people very nervous.
Yeah. And Douglas, how hopeful are you that when Trump says we will have a trade deal with China, and Caroline Leavitt, his press secretary, says we've got people beating a path to the White House door to sign trade deals. We're in advanced negotiations with 15 countries at the moment. How hopeful are you that that will actually bear fruit? We've heard this kind of talk before.
So I will give you a classic two-handed economist answer. On the one hand, I am quite pessimistic about this. What exactly does the president want from China? And for that matter, what does he want from Mexico and Canada? The essence of a deal is to have something you would like and something to offer the other country. And we don't have the makings of a deal here because we don't know what he's trying to accomplish. And so that should make you pessimistic. On the other hand, this president will never admit he's wrong. This president will always say that he did the right thing and won, but he does respond to pressure. And when president the first time he levied steel tariffs and within 2 months had exempted our largest sources of steel, Canada, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Germany. So he responded to pressure then. When he levied the new reciprocal tariffs and the universal tariff on Liberation Day, he very carefully exempted Canada and Mexico from any further tariffs because that had already been clear that did too much damage to the U.S. economy. We are integrated with those economies in a very tight way. So he's responding a little bit to pressure already. And I think, his advisors are just desperately looking for a way to give him an exit ramp and save face in this instance.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what the role of the EU, represented today in the White House by Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, what role the EU might give him when he's looking for a way out, when he's looking for a victory, because he said in the last 24 hours there would 100% be a trade deal with the European Union. He says, we're going to lead on it, essentially. We're going to call the shots. But let me quote him directly. I fully expect it, and it'll be a fair trade deal. What do you think?
I think that what that means is he paused tariffs. He'll ask the EU to pause the retaliation. That would be fair. He will then say, lower some very specific tariffs, some of which are legacies of the past, and that will give him the excuse to lower the U.S. and we'll just call it even. So there is a way out. Getting to that point, I think, is an imperative. I'm deeply concerned about the notion that the U.S. would damage the world economy this much, and in the end game, be isolated and have lost the alliance it's traditionally had with Europe. That would be a terrible outcome.
Yeah, and what about the so-called special relationship on the front page of Friday morning's Times, Douglas? The headline is this: blow to UK trade hopes as Trump says substantial tariffs will stay. But we're also hearing him boast that, hey, I'm going to be going over to the UK, I'm going to be hanging out with the king, having talks with him, he's going to be great, even bigger than last time. I mean, does he love the UK or not? And if he thinks UK is special, why is he not giving us a special deal?
He loves visiting the king. I think that's an established fact. He's very, very, very proud of the fact that this is his second invitation. He did say when he was president the first time that he'd have a trade deal with the United Kingdom within a week of them leaving the European Union. Yeah. That didn't happen. So I would, be pleased by his words, but check your wallet when he leaves.
Okay. Douglas, what a way to end. Thank you very much indeed. That's Douglas Holtz-Eakin, president of the American Action Forum and a former director of the Congressional Budget Office. It's Henry Bonsu on Times Radio. He is a fiscal conservative, a traditional conservative, and listen to how he answered my questions.